I'm getting ready to read you something. So this is about the form of colonial brainwashing, and it didn't happen just in Kenya, but across most of colonized Africa. The colonial system didn't just control land, labor, and resources, it also sought to control the African mind. This is how deep this gets. So basically, this process of psychological and cultural domination had deep and lasting effects, often passed down through generations via families, schools, and religious institutions. Now they're going to get ready to break it down. Okay. So, yes, many Africans were brainwashed systematically through education and media. Colonialism created a system that demonized African identities, from languages to customs, governance, everything. It glorified European ways of life, taught that being civilized meant being less African and more European. In Kenya, colonial schools rewarded those who conformed and internalized colonial values. Being fluent in English, being fluent in English was seen as superior. African names were discouraged. Students were renamed John, Mary, Peter. History was rewritten. Heroes of resistance from their own African cultures were branded as criminals and terrorists. A Kenyan writer named, I don't know how to pronounce it now, I'll write it on the screen, famously wrote that colonialism was not just about controlling the body, like in our instance as Black Americans, but the colonization of Africa was more about colonizing the mind, basically making them zombies. Their parents and teachers became carriers of the colonial values. Once people were educated or raised in this system, they often believed what they were taught and passed it on in schools, homes, etc. Disciplined their children for speaking African languages, taught their kids that British ways were modern and African ways were backward or shameful. They valued lighter skin, European accents, and straight hair, all signs of internalized inferiority. So, yes, many African parents, teachers, and leaders unknowingly reinforced colonial ideas, even long after independence. And this is why it was like, why don't you understand what I'm saying? Because the perspectives are different. Black American mind is over here. We didn't get enslaved mentally, but many African people did. Many of them are talking from an enslaved mind. Not all of them, many of them. So when they talk to Black Americans, it's like we're speaking a whole, like, what are you talking about? The creation of the new African versus the former African. Colonialism created a split identity. The new African was educated, English speaking, modern, and often disconnected from their roots. The former African was rural, traditional, tribal, and seen as uncivilized. This split created shame around being too African, led to mocking and abandoning indigenous things. Fueled ethnic division because colonial rulers classified people by tribe and used divide and rule tactics. This is how a people colonized externally began to colonize themselves internally. The effects still linger today. Even in 2025, some African schools still prioritize European literature and history over African stories, many African languages being lost or seen as useless. Urban elites may still look down on rural cultures. Ideas of development are still often Western defined. It's not just brainwashing, it's a form of generational trauma and identity manipulation. But there's also been resistance and an awakening. Okay. Um, Movements to revive African languages, histories, and philosophies are growing today. So while brainwashing was real and powerful, it was never total, and many Africans today are working to reclaim what was stolen or distorted. So yes, colonialism brainwashed many Africans into believing that being African was inferior, and this was a mindset passed down from by parents, teachers, everywhere, even institutions. It created a new African who rejected the former African, leading to deep identity conflicts that still affect Kenyan and African society today. The whole bondage was different in Africa. The whole thing. Okay? It's more effective when you brainwash people here. Like internally and psychologically, it's more effective because you don't need to fight. You don't need to fight them. They voluntarily just because they want to be you. So they just voluntarily do whatever makes the colonizer happy. Versus Black America, who is just in bondage physically. We radical. We radical for out. No, this is what no, and see that's how we are. And so that leads to the misunderstanding. Why don't you understand what I'm saying? Like why wouldn't you understand what I'm saying? That's the reason. That's the reason why there's a clash a lot of times depending on who you talk to, right? There's a super clash because they see it as one way, like, yeah, we're more white because that's the brainwashing, right? And then they clash with Black Americans because we like, what the flip? Because and that's why you see a lot of us saying, why they sound like so much like the colonizers? Why they sound so much like them? I mean, they sound just like them. They're talking to us like the colonizers would say, like what? Because they're white on the inside. That's why. That's why it's easy for some to say, call out the word. That's why you a slave. That's why you, and it sounds so much like, what? Because this brainwashing. It's the sunken place. It is the sunken place. The sunken place is real. It's the sunken place.